Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar today. First of all, a couple of comments regarding housekeeping. Please kindly asking you all turn off your cameras, that you are not sending video content to the chat, and as well kind request to you to mute your microphones. So we save the bandwidth. We are not overflooding traffic today, and many of you or all of you can get as much as possible from the webinar today. So let's start with the agenda for this session. First, I want to give you some introduction about a simple setup, what a simple setup is, and why we developed this solution. Then we go next to see application diagram to understand how all components are connected together. I'm going to have a touch on hardware description, so how the units are connected with the control devices, what control ports we are using, and so on. Probably the most important section today is about a simple setup. So we are going to see in a presentation overview, and we go step by step to do typical setup inside this application. I want to show you also some practical demo with my demo gear, including some flavor of news we are having on the horizon, and they are coming soon this summer. Good to point out our good demo tool. I will mention also support tools we are having to support your activities with a simple setup and around. I'm going to have a touch on some new units coming and wrap up in the end. So going to the point about introduction. Hope there is no issue with audio video broadcasting today. So no one is reporting any issue regarding audio or video. So let's go to see next slide with the introduction of a simple setup. Simple setup solution was our big effort we launched a year ago because we understood that for small huddle rooms or entry-level installations, meeting rooms where it is not necessary to integrate a large, very complex control system solution, it's important to have some basic control solution, but including also tool, including a software tool, which can help significantly to do easy setup for almost every installer, for every technician, without having many years of experience of programming, without knowing our programming tool, and so on. So the basic ideas behind are really described on this slide, to tell you that it's easy integration, it's easy installation, and finally when you do commissioning, you go through the application called Simple Setup, which helps you a lot to complete your work at the installation site. On the next slide, you may understand better what this is all about. Here in this application diagram, you see on the top line typically control devices. So you may control standard devices many of you are familiar with, like audio, video equipment, lights, air conditioning, heating, ventilation, or whatever else. In the middle, it's the control solution based on our control key basic, where is simple setup application running. And in this picture, there is a connected one, keypad Q55. I will be talking about more options on the next slides, including also new device coming to our portfolio this year. Important last message on this slide is you have any computer device, laptop or desktop computer, or even you may use your tablet or iPad for connection to our controller. And everything what you need is just a web browser where you open a simple setup application and you go step by step to do settings for the system. Having a detailed description about interconnection on the left side of this slide, you see the basic configuration with the one keypad. What is probably the most of the installations using just a one keypad. So this keypad is directly connected to the controller with a special cable, where is delivery of a control data and a power supply. So the keypad is powered up from a controller and is having a communication via RS485 with the controller. Controller itself is just a PoE powered device, so there is no extra external power supply, and you can easily power up this device with a PoE provided from a PoE switch on your network, or you may use the help from a PoE injector. And this is all what you need for powering the unit. And there are also control ports on this controller, and these control ports are giving you opportunity to connect control devices. So some examples are at the bottom of the left side of this slide, showing you what the typical devices you may control together. The right side of this slide is giving you opportunity to scale up the configuration of the system. So if you need more than one keypad, you can go to connect 2 or 3 or up to 5 in total keypads. You can connect to one controller, and these keypads are typically installed on many different locations. So you can have for example one keypad installed directly in a table. Other keypad should be installed next to doors on the wall, and so on. It's up to you. So you have a pretty much a good flexibility here. Even probably the most of the systems will have a 1 or 2 keypads only. Good to mention here, there are some technical limits on the bus. As you see, if you have a multiple keypads, there is a daisy chain connection for those keypads, and of course there is a maximum length of the bus. Typically from a control point of view, from RS485 protocol point of view, the maximum length of the bus should be 1.2 kilometers. But probably much more important is the power supply, because typically when you go to have a longer cable, you have some voltage drop. And this voltage drop means that you are not delivering to the last device at least some minimum voltage level necessary for powering of these units. So just to give you a brief summary here, we say that for RS485, you can have over kilometer length of the bus, but the powering should be more critical, and probably you will see that this voltage drop will shorten the maximum length of the bus. But for practical understanding, this simple setup solution based on this controller and keypads is dedicated to small rooms, to huddle rooms, where typically distances between even controller and keypads are 10 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters max. So it's not a big deal, and we have tested that such a maximum length of the bus can work easily up to 100 meters, probably even more. There is a last influence on that, and that's the quality of a used cable. So depending on what kind of a cable you are using, you may extend or shorten this maximum length. But even the worst cable we know about can give you opportunity to have a maximum length 100 to 100 meters. So it's not a big deal for installations where this system, where this concept is designed for. Now let's see description of the controller. There is a main port on the label called PoE LAN, which is a port for connection to your local network. This port is used for powering as well. This port is used for IP control, and by design, by default, can control up to 8 controlled IP devices. So you may connect to your system up to 8 controlled IP-based devices, and the controller will send them control commands. Keypad port we are using for connection with the keypads. So there is only one port, and if you have a multiple keypads, you use the fact that on a keypad we have a dual ports and they have a same functionality, and you can do daisy chain interconnection. So just a first keypad is connected to the controller directly. Second keypad is connected to first one. Third keypad is connected to the second one, and so on. There is one bidirectional full power RS-232 or RS-485 port, or serial port if you want. So you can switch between these two modes as you wish, and you can control any control device having a serial port for control. There is one more port called sensor. This is sensor port or sensor input port is typically dedicated to digital input, and can provide 12 volts DC output also for powering the sensor. So originally we designed this port for occupancy sensors for the room, so occupancy sensor can be connected to this controller directly. Next, other 4 universal ports are more flexible, so you can use them as a digital inputs or outputs. You can use them as a serial ports, but just one way, just sending commands out to the control device. And you can use them as well as an infrared output, so you can connect to these ports infrared transmitting diode transmitter. And these sensors, these transmitters can control traditional consumer equipment instead of using infrared remote control. On the right side, 2 more ports are prepared for relay. So we are using a low voltage relay here. Typically, power you can load onto these relays is a 24 volts, half ampere. If you need to drive, if you need to control some high power stuff like a light or a motor for projection screen, it's recommended that you connect this low voltage relay with some high voltage switch or high voltage relay as usual. So that's description of the ports. If we go further to see introduction to Simple Setup. Simple Setup is the tool for configuration or for configuring a control system without the programming. It's based inside a web server, so it's using a standard web interface. And good news, well, it was a good news almost a year ago, but it's important for you to know that if you are purchasing Control Cube Basic controller, Simple Setup as an application is the part of firmware delivered inside a Control Cube Basic controller. So since I think it was the end of August last year. Since end of August last year, all control key basic controllers are delivered with the firmware having a simple setup as an integral part of that. So you don't need to think about any special application, about any special tool you have to install on your machine. And you just need to have any device where you can open the web browser and where you can establish a connection to the controller via wired network or wireless if you are using Wi-Fi. And then you can do configuration directly in a simple setup. It's very easy, as you will see in the next minutes. Also, it's good to know that you may use the same environment, simple setup, to prepare keypad labels for keypads. So you don't need to have a separated tool for DTP or whatever else. And you can design with some preloaded components, preloaded symbols, and text. You can design labels as per your wish. And in the end, you can export it to PDF file, which should be printed on a laser printer or other kind of printer. So you may prepare these labels for keypads on your own, and it's very, very easy. It's a very easy task. Now, let's go to see step by step how to do simple setup if you go to open this application inside a controller. So the first is a title page. This title page is helping you to give or to put together some basic information about the project you are working on. So typically the mandatory, it means must, is the project name. But there is a couple of other entries you may use as a benefit for your future work, especially if you will be coming back to this saved project a year later, and you need to get more information what this project originally was prepared for. So there is a typical fields you may find there are name of designer, name of integrator, what is the place or address of the project, and version, and so on. You will get more details when we go to practical demo. Also, a part of creating a new project on this title page, you can export the project to the file, which can be used later for backup purposes as well. You can use this saved project to be used in other room if the room has same configuration. So it's very easy to use a copy-paste functionality. If you have multiple rooms and they have exactly the same configuration of the equipment, so typically you go to the first, you do simple setup. When the project in the first room is completed, you save the project to backup file, and then you use this backup file in all other rooms. You will just import it. So next functionality here is import project. So you restore project from the backup, or you import the project saved in the original first room. Project information, I gave you some examples of typical information you may get out of this page. Going next tab or next page in the simple setup is called devices. What the devices means, typically device is equal to device driver in our expression here. What is technically a description of a control device? And this driver is having inside some set of control commands helping you to control device. These drivers can be prepared for different connection, so you can use them for IP, for serial ports, for infrared ports, and so on. These drivers typically, or devices, can be prepared by you directly in a simple setup if necessary, but we count more on import from cloud libraries, so we are growing the family of drivers available on the cloud. So for many of you, it should be easier, and definitely the main stop here, that you click on the import button and you import drivers as you wish from a cloud library. We will be talking about this feature in more detail soon. As well, if you don't have an internet connection, you may import a driver from the file, which should be saved on some local machine. As well, you can export driver to file. So if you are pushed or if you are in need to prepare some driver on your own inside the simple setup, you can still export it to the file and use it as a separated driver for a simple setup on other future places. Also, we are having some embedded drivers or embedded devices there. These drivers are typically a fixed part of a simple setup. You cannot modify. You cannot add embedded drivers or devices there. And these drivers are completely maintained or controlled by simple setup application. So what we are considering on a wish list is if we are going to do some maintenance in device drivers or embedded device drivers, embedded devices. That's under consideration at the moment. I don't think there is a huge accent as we have a higher priorities I will be talking about soon. But this should be considered how to move on with the embedded devices. Next step or next step is about the channels. In the channels section, you can see how the drivers are assigned to different ports. So in the channels, you do assignment. You know that, for example, there is a driver for IP driver for controlling, I don't know, a Panasonic projector. So you can assign this to IP port with some basic details, parameters. Or you can use a different driver, for example, for Sony serial protocol for controlling a Sony projector. You can use this on a serial port or on any of the universal ports. So technically, this slide is showing you the metrics of possible combinations. In the channel section itself, what you will see in a practical demo is the final assignment between the ports and the drivers. So you put together how these drivers are going to be used, or how you will control your control devices. Next section about the macros is helping you to put together some sequence of commands or actions you want to execute at once or together somehow in some scenario. And this execution will be initiated typically by easy action or easy initiation, like a press on the button on a keypad. So you can press the button and the macro will be executed, and inside the macro you might have a sequence of commands. So this macro will do several different actions or several different activities, like will power on all devices installed and controlled in the room. We do have support for various commands inside these macros by default. These commands are embedded inside inside a simple setup. So typically, wait command is a system command. So you may say that you want to wait for some time until the macro is completed. Keypad indicator control is one part of a system command, and of course you may integrate inside a macro all of your drivers for device control, which are defined in the previous two steps. So in the devices section and the channels section. Important to say here, macro can be started by button or by event, but probably most important here that it's not a multitasking environment, so only one macro can run at a time. So a simple setup is not multitasking environment, and you have to keep this functionality in your mind when you think about a typically multiple keypads environment, because there are some differences. Typically, if you have just one keypad, you cannot run macro or a next macro if one or first macro is in execution. So the next macro is not accepted because it's a single task environment. But there is a difference if you have a multiple keypads. So if you start the second macro from second keypad, this macro is queued and is waiting until the first one is completed, and then it will be executed as well. So there are some differences you have to pay attention on, and you have to keep in your mind if you are using a simple setup solution. Next section, next step is about the layouts. These layouts are describing better what is the design and the functionality of a keypad, of control panel. And typically in this section, you may go step by step to prepare keypad layout. So you may use some symbols, so you may use different macros prepared. You may use a different type of a button. So it's like mix of many different activities. And probably better here to understand all of these features again through the practical demo. What should be interesting that we do support different types of the button. So normal button, push button will start a macro assigned to the button one time. So when you press the button, the macro is executed once. You can use the type called repeat, which means that you press once and the macro is executed repeatedly within the period of time you set in a simple setup. And then also we do support toggle button on these keypad buttons. And a toggle button means that you can use up to 4 different states. And these 4 different states means, for example, switching 4 different inputs on a large screen monitor or a projector. So typically you can use one button of a keypad to switch between VGA, DVI, HDMI, and analog or S-video inputs. And when you press the button again for 5 times, you will get again a first input. It's like a loop. You can switch between all of these states you have set in a simple setup. So in the case of a toggle button, you can switch between just 2 states or 3 states or up to 4 states. We support on simple setup. Next section is about the panels. So here it is a list of, here you can see the list of connected keypads, physical connected devices to the controller. And in this section, you can assign which keypad, which control panel will be doing what kind of job. So based on a previous job, based on the layouts, you assign to each panel connected to the system which layout is on this particular panel. Of course, in this section, you can see some other information like indicator, green or red indicator, showing you if you have connection with this keypad or not. So green means it's connected keypad already existing in the project and it's online. If you see red indicator, it means there is a keypad which was included in the project, but now is not physically connected and it's not on, it's not powered. So such information you can get out of this section. Next, it's about last section in the simple setup we call events. These events are defined by installer. So typically you can say what will happen when we power up device, or what is happening when some embedded drivers or sensors are closed or open. You cannot add an event, but you can start some action which is available there. And typically, what should be big benefit in event section that you start even after the unit is powered up. So you may say when the unit is powered up, completely switch on the room or something like that. More is better to go deeply to play with the equipment and to do some practical tests and practical experience. Learning through the experience is always the best. So now I'm going to show you some practical demos. So I will be using my demo gear I'm having here. So what is going to happen, I will connect my computer to the network. Where is my demo gear connected? Actually, everything is connected together. If necessary, I can use, actually here is not updated slide, so I apologize for that. But I will be talking soon also about a queue network scanner, which we called in the past reservation suite scanner. That's the tool helping us to search for queue units on the network. And this is fantastic for having access to our units. And typically you can easily open a web browser through this scanner if you want to access admin web, and if you want to do some setup. So what we are going to do, we are going to open the browser. I have a prepared simple setup there, and we can go step by step to see how that works in a simple setup environment. Okay, now I'm going to prepare my browsers for you guys, and I switched to sharing the browser, so you will see what is happening on my screen. So now you see two browsers, one on left side, one on right side, connected to my control key basic controller. So here you can see what is happening if you are having an open simple setup environment. Maybe going a little bit upper, I will start from the menu. So when you connect, now please pay attention on the left side of the screen. When you connect your browser to control key basic, typically screen you can get is here in the left web browser. What you can do here, you can go to the configuration of the unit as with all other queue units. And here is a traditional admin web. What you can do, you can upgrade the firmware, you can upload applications, you can work with the licenses, you can set the date and time, and many others. The most important for the session today is a simple setup. So when you click a simple setup, you will get the open simple setup main title page like here in the left browser. Why I'm showing you two windows or two browsers now is the reason that we are having in development, we are working very hard on some upgrade of a simple setup to 2.0 version. And as a preliminary, as a flavor for your understanding, this 2.0 version is on the right side. So in my web browser cache, I have stored some screens showing you what is happening in a new version of a simple setup. And immediately here on the title page, you can see, okay, there are some small adjustments, small changes coming. The significant ones I will describe in the next minutes. So let's start in the left browser, which is connected to the controller where is a running application. So it's alive. It's not just a cache in my web browser. First, on this title page, I can easily edit all of the data for my project. So as I said, you can set the name of your project. That's a mandatory. You must. And all other details, all other fields are up to you. You can put any extra information helping you to recognize what this particular project is all about when you are coming to open the file after 1 year or 2 years or whenever. Also here on this title page, you can start a new project if there is no existing one. If I will start a new one right now, I will delete my existing project from the memory. So be careful about starting a new one when existing project is still there. You can export the project to the file. You can import a new project from a file from in your backup or prepared before. So that's what you can do on the title page. Next, go to devices. Immediately you can see here that we keep the same devices section in a new generation of simple setup. What is the most important here? I was talking about the user drivers or user devices and embedded devices. So if you go to section embedded, you cannot edit them. You can see what was prepared by our programmers and what is the part of firmware. And you can use them or not. It's up to you. In the user section, you have a much more flexibility. So you can prepare a new driver or new device on your own if you start a new here, and you fill in all necessary details about such a device or driver. So you can select if you want to design or if you want to put together IP driver or serial driver and so on. What I believe is still the most used, the most frequently used tool here that the many installers will benefit from the fact that they can import drivers from the cloud. So when you click on this button, you will get a list of devices available in our cloud-based library. So every time you go here, you can select, okay, I want to have this driver, this device, and I want to have this device. And when you select all devices you need, you can import them to your project. Here I want to stop to switch quickly to newest generation of simple setup, because when I open this import from cloud window, you can see that there are some differences. You see difference between the left window and the right window. And the difference is that's a new generation which is helping you to search for manufacturers or exact model, and it's much more prepared for the growing base. The list on the left side was good for some initial phase of a simple setup, but as the library is growing, it's probably less and less useful to scroll through very long lists. So it's much easier to say, if I switch to right side, where is a new version, I can say apart, and it's a full text search, and immediately you will get a filtered only apart devices if you use filter in a manufacturer. So it's a pretty cool tool. And I do believe you will appreciate that when it will be launched later this year. So that's how it works here. It's a new, and it's really exciting. So when you put drivers together on the list and you have all devices typically included in the project, so you know you have all of these devices controlled by different protocols or different ports, serial, IP, or infrared. You can leave it as it is, as it was prepared by our programmers, or even you can open the driver and you can do some modification if necessary. If you go back, you see the list. You have a prepared list of drivers important from the cloud, probably most often. And then you go next to channels section. And channels section is going to be the same in a new version of the newest generation of Simple Setup. And in this section, we are assigning which device, which driver is connected to which port or physical port you control, you are having for controlling the device. So typically here you see 8 lines, because you can assign up to 8 control devices to IP ports. You can see there is a full power serial port you can use to control any device via serial port. You will see 4 universal ports where you can say which port is used for what kind of driver or device. And also you can set what is happening to relay, as we have regarding my introduction, as we have these 2 low voltage relays. Going next, on the next slide, in our current release of Simple Setup, next step, exactly the same order as I described in presentation, is a macro. So next you are going to prepare some macros. I have prepared some macros on my own in advance, or you can start a macro completely from the scratch. You can call this as a new macro. And when such a macro is started, it's empty, there are no records, and then you can add what will happen. So typically you can say, okay, this device, AV receiver on KIO, and we are going to power on. Next, for example, you want to use an embedded command in a Simple Setup. So you may say, okay, wait for 1 second. And here you will get the list or sequence of commands which is prepared for such a macro. If I go to open one of my macros here, you see that in this macro I have 18 lines, but it's a plug and play. And if you need to change the order, you can easily take, for example, this one, and you can move it up, and you will change the order as you wish. So it's a very easy, very fast approach. So when you are doing final tuning or final polishment for the macro, you can easily change the order of different commands in this macro. So that's how you prepare the macros. But here is important to say that in a new release of Simple Setup, which is going to be launched later this year, on the next section we are not having macros but the layouts. This is based on some feedback we got between August last year and today, that for many people from philosophic point of view is probably better to prepare layout first, so to design how the keypad layout looks like, and then to assign for each button what this button will do, what the macro will be executed by this button. So in our existing or current release of Simple Setup, it is exactly as you see on the left side of the screen I'm sharing with you. On the right side, there is a swap between layouts and macros. So you can see here is a swap between these two sections. So going back to our existing current one, so first I prepare macros, then I go to layouts. In a new way, these two will be swapped. So in existing release of a simple setup, in this section layouts, I prepare a layout so I can start again some new from the scratch, or I can use some of the layouts I have prepared. If you want to start a new one, you can say what is new, what is the name. You can say it's a new layout. You can set the brightness of a backlit on a keypad as well. You can say how bright is the indicator in each button, and then you will get a list of all 8 buttons on a keypad. And you can go step by step saying, okay, I want to do on the first button, for example, type of the button will be push. So once pressed, once executed, and you will execute, for example, macro called world2. You can save it. Now you see that on the first slide is assigned a macro. It's a world2 name. It's a push button. And also you need to think about the label, which is this black window in the left part of this this section. So you can go back and you can say, okay, I don't want to use the number 1. I want to use, for example, text instead. Going back, and you see there is a text instead of a number I had in the label before. Or you may say, I want to use a text and some symbol, and the symbol should be, I don't know, VGA, D-sub connector, graphics. So I select that, and you see the combination of both. But maybe you are not happy with the design, and maybe you decide to use just a symbol. So you can delete the text easily. And you can say, okay, this button will be used for Apple TV instead of VGA control. So I will use an Apple TV symbol, Apple TV graphics. And then you continue for all other projects. When you are done, you have to pay attention on there's a blue button here saying new label, and this new label is showing you a possibility to export the design of your layout to the label you can print out on the printer. So when I click on this button, I will get this window saying how many same labels I want to have on one A4 page. I can download a PDF file. When it is downloaded, I can open it, and you will see here is the typical export from a simple setup. So you can print out these labels on your printer. So it's a very, very, very easy. And you have a multiple same labels. So if you are installing a typical project here, having multiple rooms, exactly the same size and same equipment, you can easily prepare labels for all of those rooms at once. So that's how you export the label to PDF and for possibility to print that out on the printer. In a new release and a future release of simple setup, these layouts will be done first, and then you will assign the macro. What I cannot show you here on the right side because it's still not developed, that the idea is that you start with the layout and you open the layout, you start designing your layout, and here in this section you will have a chance to create new macro which will be edited in the next step. So first you will start with the layout, you will create a macro, and in next step in a macro section, you will edit a macro and you will add all commands inside the macro. So two different accesses to the same. Going back to the current release, after layouts, when you are done, when you have all layouts prepared, you go to next section called panels, and the panels are showing you all connected or all historically defined keypads in your project. So if you see here is the green indicator on the left side, you know that this keypad is already connected, it's online. If there is a red indicator, you know that this keypad was historically included in the project, but now is not connected, it's not on. So the status is showing you it's in red. You can add more, you can search for them on your system, and you can also edit what layout is assigned to this exact hardware keypad. So you go to open the dialog for each keypad, and you can select from all existing layouts you prepared in previous steps. So whenever you want to say, okay, I don't want to use a universe layout, I want to use a new layout, you can save that, and a new layout is assigned to the keypad, so you can do everything in a new way. If you have multiple keypads here, you will have more lines, and sometimes because you do this simple setup settings after physical installation of hardware units, so very often you cannot benefit from having a look at the label on the rear side of a keypad where is the serial number. So you want to search, or you want to indicate which keypad here on the list is physically installed where on in the room. And that's a great tool with this bulb button on the right side. So whenever you click on that, only one keypad is highlighted with the full brightness and all others are dimmed. So you can easily see, okay, the first line I'm having in my simple setup is exactly the keypad I have installed next to doors. So you can easily identify which is which one is installed where, and then you can assign, okay, I'm going to have this layout I'm going to have assigned this layout on this exact keypad. So that's in the panels. If we go next in events, you can see I have prepared even what is happening when the controller is going to have power. So whenever it's powered up, I can say, okay, macro called world1 can be executed. So that means that every time I power up the controller and firmware is and the system is fully running, simple setup is running immediately when it's fully up. This world1 macro is executed based on this event specified here. These last two sections, panels or events, are going to remain the same in second generation of simple setup. So you see it's almost the same as in current release. The most important visual differences are, here is a swap between these two, and in devices there is a completely redesigned import from cloud pop-up window. Okay. So that's a very briefly demo with the simple setup admin web. Now let's go back to the presentation, and I am going to tell you a couple of more things. So where is that? Now you are back in the presentation, and you can see what's going on this slide. Okay, let's go to next slide, and the next slide is describing. Before I jump on the next slide, I said a practical demo. So physically, I was connected to my demo gear here, which is always the best. If you can play with the equipment. If you have a physical connection, you don't read just the document, or you don't read, or you don't follow, or you don't watch just a webinar recording or presentation. It's always better if you can play on your own with the real equipment. Always better to have a hands-on. What I'm using here in my office room is my lovely demo tool called Demo Q2. Demo Q2 we prepared in the end of last year, and it's based in a Peli case, and it's a fully functional set of touch one demo equipment and a simple setup demo equipment. So here you can see probably in the right side of the case is a controller with the 2 button keypads installed for simple setup demonstration. Now you may remember that in my simple setup I had only 1 keypad. That's the reason, because a second keypad I have replaced in my demo case with some new unit I'm going to talk about very soon. So that's the last point on this slide. It's prepared for Touch 1.4 or Tap Q4 upgrade. So this demo tool is prepared that one of desk interfaces or workplace interfaces and one of keypads can be replaced with new units. So that's exactly what is happening to my demo case. So technically I have a new Tap Q4 unit installed in my demo case, but because there is still final firmware in development, I'm using this unit for demo as a separated one, and it's not connected to simple setup. So that's why I had a chance to see in my demo only controller and 1 keypad. A part of Demo Q2, which is heavily recommended, I strongly recommend to all of you who is involved in a business with a Q, that you will get a one, because it's a fantastic tool. You can use, even you are late, you are coming to the meeting late because of a traffic issue or whatever else, and you don't need a long time for preparation, because you have a case, everything is already connected together. You open the lid and you just need a power, you plug it in a power cord, and you need 1 or 2 minutes to get everything ready for doing a demo. So that's definitely something customers you are going to talk to, you are going to visit, will appreciate a lot, because you are not wasting their time. A part of this demo Q2, there is a lot of other supporting tools. I mentioned at some point a new scanner we started to call Q Network Scanner instead of Reservation Scanner. So on the next slide, I tell you a little bit more about this new scanner we launched recently. Also, a good stop here is about the drivers. I showed you how you can import the drivers from the cloud, and it's a good point to talk a little bit more about the details here, because we are really interested to help you as much as we can. I want to mention also a possibility to localize simple setup into your language if necessary, or wherever necessary. And there is a lot of other tools regarding a simple setup and our basic control solution. So I put together some set of PDF files you can find on many different places on our website. I will share after webinar all of these materials with one link, giving you access to all of those documents and files at one place. If necessary, for some documents like a leaflet, if you need a high resolution picture, we can also offer you native files which are prepared in Adobe InDesign. So Adobe InDesign format file should be shared with you if necessary, of course on demand. So whoever needs such a support, please let us know, and we will send you the link for downloading this high resolution or native files. Last but not least, as a supporting tools, we started recently to post the new tutorials describing more and more in details, very short tutorial videos, different or variety of areas. So we prepared already some tutorial videos for Key Visual Composer. So you may learn there how to start a project from the scratch if you want to get to the basic system. We are posting more and more also tutorials for helping people with a Touch One reservation system. Also, we have a focus on some installation guides, and in the same area, we are also showing some videos from recent or last the most important trade shows we were participating in. What is also under preparation, of course, there is a lot of new stuff coming regarding tutorial videos, and one of those is a tutorial video for a simple setup, giving you very detailed step-by-step instruction set how to go through simple setup, which I tried briefly in our webinar today. And this tutorial does not exist yet because we are waiting at least for first final front end of this new 2.0 simple setup release, which we can use for this tutorial. So we want to prepare this tutorial with a new generation of the simple setup, having the swap between layouts and macros, and having also this new pop-up window for import from the cloud. So this is a tutorial we want to keep as more future-proof. That's why it's still somewhere in the development. Q Network Scanner, I mentioned a couple of times. So we released the latest version about 2 weeks ago or something like that. It's having a little bit more features. It's finally called Q Network Scanner, which is better describing the functionality because it's not dedicated to reservation suite in Touch One only. So you can search for all the Q devices. You can filter just Touch One devices. You can filter just control system devices. You can select all of those information in Q Network Scanner, and you can copy paste somewhere else, like to Excel spreadsheet or wherever you need. Also, you can do export to CSV file of all of these data. Not important to say here. You can also use this Q Network Scanner for opening directly the admin web for each of those units. You can see listed in the scanner. So if you want to open your browser and you don't need to retype or manually type IP address of the device you want to connect to, just a double click on the line in a Q Network Scanner, and when you double click on the line of device you want to open admin web, the browser is open automatically exactly with the IP address of an admin web for this device. So it's very easy to use. strongly recommend to use it. I love to use that because it helps a lot to save a lot of time. Last but not least, there is a tutorial. So in the sections I described on the previous slide, there is a tutorial describing use of Q Network Scanner. So you can watch this tutorial to learn more about this fantastic tool we are having to help all Q friends and customers to do necessary maintenance with our products. Next, I mentioned the drivers for a simple setup. I showed you the different pop-up windows, and it's also important to say that we try to focus on the development of the new drivers for you, that it will be much easier in the field. You don't need to design or create a driver on your own, and you can import it from the library. So here is wherever you may find a document, it's a PDF file. So a part of Control Key Basic and Simple Setup application, you can find on our website PDF file showing you the most recent list of drivers available in a Simple Setup. So on the same place, you will see more often updated file, which is going to have in the footer newer date, and the list will be growing. What is important message to all of you? If you want to get life easier, if you want to benefit from this functionality import from cloud, and you don't want to create driver on your own, please give us feedback and say, oh, we need the drivers for those devices, and give me the list of devices and exact ports you want to use for control, and we will prepare these drivers for you and upload them on the cloud library. So that's the plan. Also, what may help you a lot is if you need a translation of a simple setup, because very often this system is installed by installers, and maybe installers are not perfectly skilled in English, and they will benefit using local language. So if you want to have this feature, please join us and help us. We will do support for you. And here is a description how we can do localization to any language. So first of all, we provide you the JSON, keeping all text in English. You need some JSON editor. One of recommended is a Babel edit. Here is the link where you can get it. And you can easily translate all text in a JSON from English to your local language. And after translation, you send it back to us. And we try hard to include this in the next release of firmware. Of course, as always, important note in the end, we reserve technical rights for some specific languages, because not always is it easy to translate the text. So typically for non-Latin character sets languages, we need probably more time and investigation, understand how to do that. So for Latin based languages, it's much easier. So for all of you using Latin based languages, if you need a translation, please get back to us. One new unit coming very soon. I was mentioning TabQ4. One first demo piece is installed in my demo Q2 case, and TabQ4 is a new unit coming to control system family, and we'll have several different scenarios of a use. So first of all, it's a network button control panel, so it's an IP-based device. You can generate buttons on the screen via admin web. That's the plan, to have this feature. From a technical point of view, it's a plastic enclosure having a color LCD display over 4-inch size. There is an NFC reader integrated inside, which might be used in later phases as well. As I said, it's a PoE device, so you have one cable coming in, and it's powered from a switch or injector. It's a slim, elegant design. You can install it as a desktop version, or you can rotate the bottom up and you can install it on the wall next to doors. Whatever is the installation, you can switch in the setup, so you can rotate the picture easily. Mounting accessories is included. We plan to launch it later this year. And also later this year, there is a plan to have a support for TapQ4 in a simple setup. So a part of PoE power, a part of a LAN connection, there is a plan to use a pair of other connectors on the device. So this device can be also connected directly to Control-Q basic controller, same way as a keypads with 8 buttons. So the plan is you might have one or second version or any combination with button keypads and TapQ4, and everything will be done in a simple setup. But simple setup support for TapQ4 is a little bit farther at the moment, so it will be added to simple setup later this year. Okay, now I go to Q&A section, and I know I got some questions, and I apologize I didn't address them before, as I wanted to stay on track and keep all of us not disturbed from right activities. So the questions I got is, actually, the first question is it possible to lock out the other keyboards while macro runs so the macros are not queuing up? Not at the moment. It should be considered, and I have to ask our developers. So if you run the macro and you start a second macro from a second keypad, it's always queued. That's the functionality of current release, and it's not possible to lock out other keyboards from that. Second question, or just disable macro queuing? No, it's not possible at the moment. Any other question? Keypad Q55, any chance there will be a PoE IP version? Good point. I will make a note about that for our developers. At the moment, we do not have a Keypad Q55 as an IP device. And this might be considered later. So if you have other questions, please ask directly in a conversation section in Microsoft Teams, or send an email to us later, and I will try to address all of those wishes and questions to right people, that we will be bringing the expected answer to all of you soon. Just a brief wrap up for today and a summary. So what is happening about simple setup? New simple setup 2.0 is coming at some point later this year. The biggest improvement, it's a swap in the menus, macros, and the layouts. There is a new import pop-up window if you import the drivers from the cloud. There will be support for TapQ4 as well. You might have a benefit from a simple setup translation. If you need it, please get back to us. New drivers, give us a feedback also on this point. It's important, and it's easier for you that we will prepare drivers and you will download them, and you don't need to spend a lot of time in creation of new drivers. And as always, the most important, just not being so dry as of today with my PowerPoint and the browsers. It's always better to have a hands-on. So get the demo equipment, try to play, learn through the experience, and do demo to your colleagues and your customers. Okay, I got one more question. Do you need to set an address on keyboard 55? Okay. There is necessary to differentiate the keypads, that each keypad will have a different ID. It is an ID is used for differentiation between the multiple keypads if you have an environment of multiple keypads. But by default, this should be set automatically by a simple setup, so you don't need to go to do this manually. And each keypad will get a different ID, so you are sure that if you are assigning layout, this layout is assigned to exact keypad having address or ID as set by the system. Okay. I think we are going to close the session today. So if you have some ideas or feedbacks, or if you want to give us some replies on the webinar today, or functionality with a simple setup or whatever else, one group email address you may use is a webinar@qsystem.com. So please feel free and send us any email helping us to understand better your needs and giving us the direction where to go when we are designing new tools for helping you with your projects and bringing you more and more attractive solutions you are expecting from us. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for your time today, and hope to see you soon and on other webinar or somewhere else. So please check your inbox after the webinar today, later today, where you will receive a follow-up, and you will get the link for downloading all of the materials, including recording from today's webinar. Again, thank you very much, and have a great day.